I believe that grade 1 sorcerers are those who uphold the standards that are fit to lead our society. The dangers involved, the level of confidentiality and compensation. It doesn't compare to semi-grade 1 and below. Enter grade 1 sorcerer, Kento Nanami. In Nanami's earlier years, he went on a mission with Haibara, where they fought a grade 1 curse. This grade 1 curse was strong enough to kill Haibara and send Nanami away with injuries. Given that grade 1 curses have the same strength as grade 2 sorcerers, it's safe to say that at this time Nanami and Haibara were around grade 3. It's during this time that Nanami wants to leave the entire Jujutsu world in Gojo's hands. Gojo had just become the strongest of his generation by defeating Toji and unlocking reverse techniques, so as a special grade, he was way beyond anything that Nanami could do at the time. Time passes, and Nanami retires and rejoins Jujutsu High for the Night Parade of 100 Demons. It's during this war that Nanami uses 4 black flashes in a single fight, and sets a record that no one before him reached. The Black Flash is an attack that hits its opponent with a regular attack strength to the power of 2.5, which is said to be an attack that no one can use at will, making this even more impressive for Nanami. The difference in understanding cursed energy is said to be heaven and earth between those who have used the Black Flash and those who haven't. This is so much of a boost that Yuji didn't even recognize his own cursed energy after using it a single time, on top of the move putting its user at 120% of their potential. During the Night Parade of 100 Demons, Nanami took down several grade 1 curses completely on his own. These grade 1 curses have the same strength as grade 2 sorcerers, which many Tokyo and Kyoto students are comparable to in the Kyoto Exchange. When Nanami makes his return full-time, he's introduced to Itadori Yuji and achieved a rank of grade 1. This means that Nanami has grown from his time as a teen, where he almost died 2-on-1 to a grade 1 curse, to now being equal to special grade curses. The two start a mission and Nanami immediately separates himself from Yuji, noticing the residuals that Mahito left behind. Yuji couldn't even see the residuals until Nanami told him how to look for them, and Nanami thought this was basic for anyone who was even remotely capable. When the two fight against transfigured humans, Nanami explains his curse technique, 7-3. 7-3 lets him make a critical point on his target's body that can let him swing above his weight, since he'll hit harder than usual. In explaining this to Yuji, he also uses a binding vow called revealing one's hand. This lets his technique become more effective than normal, now that he explained it to his opponent, but it doesn't apply to every technique in the series. When he's watching Yuji, Nanami can see Yuji's potential, calling out his divergent fist as something that would go insanely well with his raw strength in a curse technique. This shows how quickly Nanami can analyze an opponent on a dime, which is something he does many times in the series. Taking Mahito's invitation, Nanami tracks him down to face him alone. Mahito is a special grade curse spirit, which is the highest rank of curse in the series. Right off the bat, Nanami can read Mahito's strength and shows no lack of confidence in facing him. This is impressive because special grade curses would destroy many characters in the series, but Nanami is sure of his own strength based on Mahito's cursed energy alone. During the fight, Nanami shows he can keep up with Mahito without any real issue, proving that once again, he's in that special grade curse tier of strength at a minimum. As the fight goes on, Nanami cuts straight through Mahito's body with his curse technique, 7-3. This is an example of 7-3 swinging above its weight class, since it ripped straight through Mahito like nothing even though he's special grade, while he defended himself with cursed energy. Nanami also shows no problem cutting through Mahito's transfigured humans, since they aren't anywhere near as strong as Mahito himself. Dodging more transfigured humans, he starts to question how they work, realizes Mahito isn't a good match for his technique, and remembers Shogo telling him to kill them without hesitation. This once again shows how on the nose Nanami is with reading a situation, even in the middle of a fight, which shows how experienced he's become over the years. Mahito responds by blitzing Nanami using his curse technique, Idle Transfiguration. The technique lets Mahito change the shape of his soul, which changes his own body, so he gives himself horse legs to become faster than Nanami for a moment in time. He uses his technique to attack Nanami's soul, saying that even though sorcerers can protect their bodies with cursed energy, they can't protect their souls without knowing about the soul itself. Nanami protects himself subconsciously, meaning he can't do it on purpose, and he would have been one-shot otherwise. Even with this, it'll only take 2 or 3 more attacks from Mahito for Nanami to never be human again. After Mahito attacks his soul, Nanami decides it's time to stop playing around. and activates his binding vow overtime. This increases Nanami's curse energy so much that it's obvious he was holding back before, which impresses Mahito. Now that he's fully serious, Nanami explains his technique to Mahito. This is him using revealing one's hand, meaning his technique is now stronger than it normally would be. While doing this, Nanami thinks about his options for defeating Mahito, saying damaging him until Mahito runs out of curse energy is unrealistic, so he has to kill him with one attack. This comes from the way Mahito's technique works, where no one can do serious damage to him unless they can damage his soul, which Nanami is unable to do. Aiming to kill Mahito in one blow, Nanami uses his ratio technique, Collapse, that takes his 7-3 technique and applies it to a massive area at one time. He even moves one step ahead of Mahito, breaking the curse's leg before it can dodge, telling him they'll meet again if they're both still alive. This is impressive because it once again shows how fast Nanami is at thinking ahead of his opponent, to take away Mahito's options before he managed to escape. Once he gets to safety, Nanami wants Shoko to tend to his injuries, and thinks back on how excited Mahito was about his own growth. Even with Mahito being a special grade, he's only barely understanding his own strength, and Nanami thinks if he isn't exercised quickly, then he'll grow past the point of no return. Once Yuji goes head-to-head with Mahito, he's almost killed before he's saved by Nanami. Nanami counters Mahito with 7-3, which still rips through Mahito's body, but not to the same degree as before, as Mahito has grown in that small amount of time. Nanami is shocked to see that Mahito is bleeding since he knows he can't seriously damage the curse. Yet he wastes no time in making a strategy on the spot when he finds out Yuji can hurt Mahito, opting to play as a support role throughout the fight. Nanami tells Yuji they need to exercise Mahito here and now, and Mahito's #1 priority becomes taking out Nanami. Mahito can't use Idol Transfiguration on Yuji because of Sukuna, so taking out Nanami and pressuring Yuji is his best option. Mahito changes his body with Idol Transfiguration, yet Nanami and Yuji both counter him with ease. Not only does this show that Yuji can match Nanami in terms of speed, but neither of them will be caught off guard by any of Mahito's cheap tricks. Barely into the fight, Nanami points out right away that Mahito stores up cursed energy before changing his shape. Nanami is constantly reading his opponent, looking for anything he can exploit to take them down. And this is no different. Mahito sends transfigured humans out to separate Nanami and Yuji, and attacks Nanami with a projectile that he dodges at the last second. These reactions are impressive because the weapon Mahito threw was only inches away from Nanami's face, and he was still able to react in time. While Yuji struggles with the thought of killing transfigured humans, Nanami is clearly losing to Mahito. Even though the gap between their first and second fight was only a few days, Nanami is already outmatched by the constantly growing cursed spirit. Yuji makes his return, and Nanami and Yuji dogpile Mahito to keep him from transforming. This is impressive because it's Nanami's plan coming into play, but also because of the coordination it takes to have two people attack one target at just the right time to keep him stunned with no gaps in between. With this, the two push Mahito to near death and force him to bring out his domain expansion, self-embodiment of perfection. Domain expansions are some of the strongest techniques in the series that spawn on top of their opponent so they can't be dodged under normal circumstances. Nanami mentions that he never mastered domain expansion in his entire career, so he doesn't have the option of countering Mahito's domain with his own, the way that Gojo did to Jogo during their fight. Within seconds, Nanami understands how Mahito's domain works, noting that since Mahito uses his hand to attack the soul, he's in the palm of Mahito's hand inside of his domain. This is yet another example of how intelligent Nanami is to figure this out so quickly. Nanami also has no counters like Simple Domain or Falling Blossom Emotion, which may not have even worked against Mahito's domain to begin with. So with no domain of his own and no domain counters, Nanami is basically screwed until Yuji saves him by breaking into the domain and forcing him to attack Sukuna. Sukuna does so much damage to Mahito that he's bleeding out on the ground, barely having any cursed energy. When Mahito makes his escape, Nanami can instantly tell that he's so weakened that even Ino Takuma, a grade 2 sorcerer, can exorcise him without issue. Later, when Yuji gets to the Kyoto Exchange, he's put up against Toto, the monster of the Kyoto squad. Toto is grade 1, the same grade as Nanami, and can take down Megami, who's grade 2, while barely putting in the effort. Toto can take the entire Tokyo squad in the eyes of Maki Zeni. The Tokyo squad ranks from grade 3 to semi-grade 1. Given that Nanami can take down several grade 1 curses in the Night Parade of 100 Demons, and fight on par with a special grade briefly, him taking down the Tokyo squad, who are close to grade 2 curses all the way up to special grades could be within his range. This should also extend to the entire Kyoto squad as well, since Toto is sure that he can kill them and no one can test him on this. The Kyoto squad ranks between grade 3 and semi-grade 1 as well, and are equal to grade 2 to special grade curses, so they should be within Nanami's range to take down. It's also worth noting that Principal Gakuganji never responded to Toto's threats. Even though he killed a grade 1 sorcerer like Yaga, Gakuganji may be within Nanami's range as well, but with Gakuganji's strength being unknown, it's hard to say. On October 31st, Gojo gets sealed inside of Prison Realm by Kenjaku, and Nanami's immediate response is that it's over for everyone in Japan. Even with all the special grade sorcerers like Yuki Tsukumo and Yuta Kotsu, ex-sorcerers like Hikari Kinji, grade 1 sorcerers like himself and Nabito Zenin, and the entirety of the big 3 families, none of this even comes close to Gojo simply being there in Nanami's mind. Even in Shabuya, Nanami places himself above Yuji, saying he's going to take on bigger threats, and leaves Yuji with Ino and Megumi. This may be due to Nanami's intelligence and experience that he showed earlier, since Yuji is comparable to him in both speed and strength. Bracing himself for trouble, Nanami wraps his bandages around his hands to perform his curse technique 7-3 in a different way. Normally this is wrapped around his blade, but Nanami is using 7-3 this way, which is very deadly when used correctly. Moving through Shabuya, Nanami comes face to face with Haruta Shigemo, one of the weakest characters in the series. Haruta's most impressive feat is taking down people like Ajichi, who don't even fight others, and attacking Nobara Kuisaki, whose strength is questionable at that time. The moment Haruta attacks Nanami, he can't even damage him, and compares hitting Nanami to attacking a brick wall. This shows how big of a gap there is between someone who's at least one grade, if not more, above their opponent, as Haruta is completely useless against Nanami. Nanami sends Haruta flying with one attack and nails him over and over again with 7-3. Each attack from Nanami was enough to kill Haruta if he wasn't saved by his technique that stores miracles that save his life. Seeing how easy Nanami takes out Haruta, Nobara recognizes that Nanami is on a completely different level than herself, regardless of how well she performed against the special grade death paintings. After this, Nanami gets ready to go find the disaster curses, all of which rank at special grade. Nobara offers to come with him, but he tells her not to, because she would only get in the way with how much weaker she is than him and the others. Once he keeps moving, Nanami joins up with Naobito and Maki Zenin. Maki, who's said to easily be able to take out grade 2 curses, and Naobito, who's supreme grade 1, meaning he can go against special grades on a regular basis. Both Nanami and Naobito agree that Maki is outmatched, and doesn't even compare to the two of them, let alone their opponents. Nanami and Naobito are equal to special grade curses, and are planning on fighting some of the strongest curses in the series, so Maki, who's not at that same level, doesn't impress them from a power perspective. Soon after this conversation, the trio faces off against Dagon, one of the 3 disaster curses, while he's still a cursed womb. Dagon has the rank of a special grade, with the highest rank for curses in the series, and will soon evolve into his full power form. Taking the first strike, Naobito blitzes Dagon with his curse technique, projection sorcery. Naobito's technique lets him split 1 second into 24 frames and move along a path of his own choosing. With Naobito's projection sorcery, he's so fast that Nanami and Maki can't even see him move. Naobito is known as the fastest sorcerer outside of Gojo, which shows how big of a gap there is between Nanami and the top tiers of speed in the series. Charging at Dagon, Nanami breaks out his curse technique 7-3 and does no visible damage to Dagon. This is a massive difference from when he broke through Mahito's arms, even with Mahito defending himself with cursed energy. In the fight, Maki almost gets one-shot by Dagon and has to be saved by Naobito Zenin, proving that Nanami and Naobito's gauge of Maki's strength was true, and that she's outmatched. Nanami attacks Dagon a second time and still does no real damage, and even struggles to get past Dagon's shield, let alone damage his body. This causes Nanami to comment on Dagon, saying it's like he has infinite HP, showing there's no way that Nanami would ever beat Dagon on his own. This goes a step further when Nanami, Maki, and Naobito all attack Dagon's shield at the same time, and Naobito is the only one that's able to get through. Even though Supreme Grade 1 is a mercenary title, this shows that there's a lot of range when it comes to Grade 1 sorcerers, since Nanami's weapon doesn't even compare to Naobito's bare hands. Naobito takes this even further by blitzing Dagon over and over again with his curse technique, completely taking control of the fight, driving the point home that Naobito may share the same rank as him, but he outclasses Nanami in every way humanly possible. After piling on the pressure, Naobito forces Dagon to open his domain, and he divides 70% of his power to Naobito, 30% to Nanami, and 0% to Maki. This is yet another way of illustrating the gap between them, straight from their opponent himself. With his domain, Dagon Shikigami attacked Nanami with no way for him to dodge. This comes from Dagon's guaranteed hit technique, instantly spawning on top of its targets, and Nanami not having any domain counters like Simple Domain or Falling Blossom Emotion. Breaking into Dagon's domain, Megami uses his own domain expansion to remove Dagon's guaranteed hit technique. This brings back Nanami, who survived Dagon's death swarm for about a minute, the same way Naobito did, but with different levels of strength. Megami brought Playful Cloud with him, and gives it to Maki, who rips through Dagon's arm with one attack. Playful Cloud amps its strength based on the strength of its user, and Maki used this to hit even harder than Nanami could with his 7-3 technique, since Nanami couldn't even damage Dagon when hitting him 2 separate times. Even after being ripped apart by Dagon's Death Swarm Shikigami, Nanami is still strong enough to take down more Shikigami before they can attack Megami. This is impressive because of how strong Dagon is, even if his domain is only using 30% of his strength on Nanami. When he sees that Dagon's guaranteed hit technique is stopped, Nanami recognizes that if it stays gone, then all of them together can win against Dagon. After using his domain expansion, Dagon would have lost a massive chunk of curse energy, and with Naobito having one arm and Maki having Playful Cloud, the two of them would be the bulk of their fighting strength. Megami forces his domain to make a hole big enough for all of them to escape, and Toji enters through the opening that Megami created. Toji Fushiguro was strong enough to take down Gojo and Suguru when they were teenagers, both of who were special grade, while being rusty from a lack of practice and the death of his wife. Toji uses Playful Cloud to destroy Dagon, and Nanami is convinced that they'll have to bet on him. Not only does Toji's performance make it clear that he's above Nanami, but Nanami is even willing to be vocal about it himself. This is in addition to Nanami believing that if Megami hadn't shown up, they would have all been killed. This means that Dagon's domain expansion would have destroyed Naobito, Maki, and Nanami without a question in his mind. Once Toji defeats Dagon, he goes after the strongest around and chooses Megami Fushiguro. This doesn't outright mean that Nanami is weaker than Megami, because Naobito isn't, but it basically means that Megami is the least injured out of the group, since Nanami and Naobito were both damaged by Dagon. Jogo shows up, who Nanami and Naobito both agree is on a completely different level than Dagon was. This is again showing even more of that variance at special grade, where even though two people have the same rank, there can be a massive gap between them. Nanami is then blitzed by Jogo, who takes down Maki, Nanami, and Naobito with varying degrees of strength. I've seen people argue about this making Jogo's strength confusing or inconsistent, but it's very clear with how he attacks and how serious he is that some of these attacks are more powerful than others, because he uses stronger moves based on his opponent's strength. Even with these attacks from Jogo, Nanami survives and is able to take down Mahito's transfigured humans. This is ridiculously impressive, because Nanami at this point has survived the Disaster Curse's domain expansion for a full minute, on top of a direct attack from one that's stronger on a completely different scale in his own words. In his last moments, he comes face to face with Mahito, who's now far stronger than the first 2 times they met, and is killed in a single attack by blowing up his entire body with Idol Transfiguration. The death of Nanami took 3 special grade curses going after him in a single day, and someone blowing up his soul, which is beyond impressive for a grade 1 sorcerer. Nanami's abilities are simple, especially since he only has 4 to talk about, one of which is his curse technique, 7-3. 7-3 divides its target into a line with 10 points, and if Nanami strikes a 3rd point at a ratio of 7-3, then he lands a critical strike on his opponent. His expansion technique, Ratio Collapse, works in a similar way, but on a much larger scale. This lets him apply 7-3 to large targets like walls and buildings, to collapse them on top of his opponent, hence the name. An ability that Nanami can't use at will is the Black Flash. This strikes his opponent with his regular damage to the power of 2.5, boosts his potential to 120%, and even though it can't be used at will, successful attempts can be made. Nanami's last ability is a binding vow called Overtime. This is when Nanami restricts his curse energy on purpose, making himself far more powerful than he was before. Someone who's had the same rank as Nanami for the entire series is Toto, so click the video on your screen to learn more about his strength.